issue that I run into with home buyers or renters is credit. A lot of people either don't know what their credit is or it's pretty low. Is there a way that we can fix it? Today, we're going to do an interview with Eric Villalta. He owns his own credit repair business, and he's going to give us some tips and tricks that can help you with your credit. And you can always reach out to him if you need help fixing your credit. So everyone, I have here Eric Villalta. He's a credit pro, and he's here to help us today with how to figure out what we're doing with credit. So Eric, how about you tell us about yourself?
Hey, thanks, George. I appreciate you having me on here. First of all, good morning. And, to everybody that's watching this, I'm sure you're going to find out a lot of exciting information about credit. Just to tell you a little bit about my background, I got involved in the industry as a commercial credit advisor, believe it or not. I did a bunch of different sales jobs in my early career, one of them being real estate right out of high school. I got my real estate license right in between that break going to Penn State. While I was actually in college, believe it or not, I translated for the government and I worked for Century 21. At the time, it was a great run. It was awesome. I met a lot of people. I learned a lot about networking. But then the economy hit between 2007 and 2008. And being a very new realtor at 18 years old, I was pushed out of the industry. I didn't give up. I got involved in a bunch of, like I said, sales positions, and I excelled. I thought that my niche was helping people, talking to people, understanding people. And then I got offered a position as a commercial credit advisor for Dun& Bradstreet. And that was exciting. That really opened the doors for me to understand a lot of the little tricks and hacks on how to get things removed if there's bad situations, if life happens to us, like a lot of us, right? And it's inevitable. And also how to get out of those things, how to improve credit, what things respond most to those changes, how to get the most out of changes in as little time as possible. So I started implementing that on myself, believe it or not, because in 2010, I went through a divorce. My credit was still very destroyed a few years after that. But I started seeing how I was able to quickly improve the credit of business owners and their paydex score, because it's completely different from our FICO. But I was going over all these ins and outs and learning in the trenches. Little did I say, I started applying this to myself, family, friends. My fiance was one of my guinea pigs. And I remember once we started cracking 10, 20K lines of credit, our life changed. Within a year from getting involved in that business and learning all those tricks and doing those things for ourselves, we were able to get a new home, get new vehicles, start another line of income using our credit, which initially started that source for that business. So it was initially a test run on ourselves, on myself, as a matter of fact, on my friends, on my family, and then organically it became a business. So then in 2017, I had met with George, another George, here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and another gentleman named Carl Orner. And the three of us put together GK United LLC because we thought there's a huge need. Me being bilingual, especially, there's a huge need. Sometimes if people don't have anyone who can walk them by the hand, and sometimes people don't necessarily need credit repair. Not everybody needs, or not everybody experiences a catastrophe on their credit. Some people just don't understand what they need to build it or how to improve it, or maybe what they need just to get them an extra 30 to 40 points so that they can get pre-approved. And that's sometimes all they need. It isn't always like a bankruptcy or like judgments and collections. It isn't always worst case scenarios, but thankfully there's a Fair Credit Reporting Act, and I've learned a lot of ways to manipulate those certain laws so that our clients have the best overall experience, they save the most money, and they have the highest credit scores possible.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So with that extensive history, a lot of people don't really know what is credit. Why do people need to care about their credit, and what does it do for them?
Good question. So credit is pretty much a fancy number just to determine the likelihood of you paying back a debt on time or not. So, and based on that number, where that number is, being in the 300s for, right, as high as 850 is where you can be, right? It's the perfect credit score. So you can be anywhere from the 300s all the way to 850. Now, what is going to help you get to the 850 is obviously going to be how well you pay your bills, how great or how good you manage your balances, how much age of credit you have. And all this stuff is really determining, again, is how someone is going to do business with you. So in an interaction, typically where someone is lending you money, whether it's a store, a bank, a mortgage lending office, a vehicle, the company and the lender wants to know how you pay bills, and a lot of times now even employers are using that just to determine, the likelihood of you showing up to work on time or following the rules. Insurance, companies use it to determine the likelihood of you listening to the laws on the road, because if you pay your bills on time and if you're doing things on time, you're probably going to listen to the laws of the road as well and stop at the red light and not eat the stop sign and things like that. So those things typically correlate, not only with employment now and not only with insurance. It's just about every facet of the world now, renters, even, people who are renting out their space, even for a year, 6 months, they want to know who they're giving their lease to. So it really just helps determine what are the actions of the client.
So 300 is probably a really bad score. And you said 850 is perfect. So what can be considered an average score, for someone to shoot for, so they have an idea of where they should be and where they can get to?
Ideally, I like to get all my clients over 700. Now, sometimes they can come in between 3, 4, 500. The average client sometimes now is running anywhere between 3 to 7 negative items per bureau. And as a matter of fact, as of recent, 83% of the country right now has a type of inaccuracy on their credit report. Not that you're doing anything wrong, not that you're not paying your bills, but unfortunately, because there's a lot of hands in between as far as where that information is reported and how it's getting to the bureau, it could get lost in transit, reported wrong, reported inaccurately. And because of that reason alone, a lot of things can be removed, even if they're yours. So I tell my clients, hey, don't worry if you had an old medical bill that you couldn't pay, an old light bill, a cell phone bill. Maybe, I had a pastor, as a matter of fact, that I hold dear to my heart now. We became very good friends. She was hit by a drunk driver not having gap insurance, coming home from a missionary one night. And the person that sold her the car, unfortunately, never explained to her it was her first brand new car and didn't, for some reason, put gap insurance on the car. And long story short, she owed the bank almost $14,000 after that accident. Almost instantly, the bank wanted their money, of course, right? She was going through all types of situations, medical bills, in and out of the hospital, car total loss. I helped her remove over maybe $20,000 worth of debt overall, with a vehicle, with medical bills, with all this craziness, and her life was able to start over, able to get a new car. I just visited her beautiful home in the Poconos. Life's moving forward, literally within not even a year from when all that catastrophe happened. So, unfortunately, most people don't understand how to get out of these situations. The reality is, the law does not the law does not hurt less because we don't know it, unfortunately, right? So we have to become better at, working around all these obstacles, because unfortunately, I'm sure she didn't want to get hit by that person. I'm sure she didn't want to go through those medical bills. I'm sure all of us don't want to feel some type of catastrophe at some point, but it's almost inevitable.
Right.
So we just got to get better at getting out of those situations. And that's why we're here, because unfortunately we don't have that guidance, right?
Right. So you mentioned medical bills. What are some other issues that you've come across that could cause your credit to be low? Not necessarily like a lot of people think judgments, like you
Yeah,
mentioned, but what are some things that hurt you maybe that you have no power over?
absolutely. Good question. So, and first of all, judgments only happen when there is an excessive amount of debt. And if you have like a Macy's bill or something like that, a credit card debt, a medical bill, nobody's taking you to court for a judgment on a medical bill. Typically, the only way you get a judgment is if there is a balance that exceeds $2,000 to $3,000 or up. Then it starts being considered a major line of credit. And then a creditor could potentially try to get those funds from you by taking you to court, putting garnishes on your wages, tax levying you. And that can come just from anything. It can come from student loans. I've seen people have collections for utilities, for not paying their rent, for breaking a lease, for all kinds of utilities, cable, energy, gas, you name it. These are all things that could affect somebody. I've had child support, show up on people's credit. Collections could be from any company that you owe money to. Essentially, they could put a collection on you to bring down your score. Now, a lot of the focus, believe it or not, on credit is on the negative stuff, is on the collections, it's on the derogatory marks, it's all on the bad stuff. And that's okay. We have a way to get rid of that. But you need to keep in mind that 60% of your credit is based on your open revolving accounts, on how you pay bills. And a lot of people forget that. We tend to say, oh, get all this negative stuff off first, and then I'll start building my credit. It doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, by removing everything and not building your credit at the same time, your credit score could drop. Because as we remove information, even though it's negative, it still contributes to something of your credit history, which does play a huge portion, actually bigger than your collections, on how your credit score works. So if we remove everything, even if it's negative, I've seen people's credit scores drop or go to a zero because they have nothing now. Now they have no accounts. They're almost starting from when they're fresh, from when they're 18. They have nothing on their credit report, whether positive or negative. Now the consumer credit reports or bureaus can't generate a score.
So having credit cards isn't a bad thing, right?
No, it's an amazing thing. And as a matter of fact, if you want to be in that 700 or higher category, it's in your best interest to have more credit cards. Now, paying them on time is the trick, and keeping your balances under 30% is trick number two. That means you can't be maxing them out just because you're paying them on time. You can't leave your credit cards maxed out or over 30%. So if you can follow those two things, you're almost 60% in the clear.
So I want to repeat that just for everyone that's watching. Negative stuff is bad. We can fix that stuff. But having balances less than 30%. So if you have a $10,000 credit limit, then you want to have less than $3,000 on it that you're paying off on time. So that's the important part. On time and less than 30% of your limit, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's actually an algorithm to credit, believe it or not, to having a 700 or higher score. There's an algorithm. It's actually specific things that take in place because that's how credit works. It's an algorithm. It's based on your oldest account versus your newest account, your highest balance versus your lowest balance, right? So that's how this stuff works. In credit, believe it or not, the minute you have 5 open accounts, they don't all have to be credit cards. I just recommend credit cards because they don't close due to they don't close unless you let them close, meaning they can build your credit forever, right? So as long as you're using your credit cards healthy, you're keeping your balances here and there. Most people don't understand that having a revolving credit card and having at least 5 or more could maintain you a 700 or higher score.
It's funny you say that. I remember when I went to college back in 1999, and my oldest account is a credit card that I opened when I was on camp. Back then, I don't know what they do now, but back then there was people handing out free T-shirts as you signed up for a credit card.
Yep.
I've never physically seen that credit card, but it's still open. It's still in my name. I've never used it. I want to say it might be a $500 balance, but it's a $0 used. But it's been since 1999. So I mean, I'm sure that helps my credit a lot.
You got to make sure at least you keep that account open as long as possible. And the older your accounts are, that's one of the reasons, you're over 800 is having over 10 years of payment history, and having one credit card is great. Paying one bank on time looks awesome. But if you want to get serious loans, if you're looking after going maybe for a mortgage or maybe starting your own business or getting a line of credit to do something on the side, you want to show that you can pay more than one company on time.
Okay.
That's referred to as trade lines, right? Whether you're paying your auto, your credit card, your mortgage, these are all different trade lines that report to the bureau. So the more open accounts, the more open trade lines you have that are on time, like you said, George, the higher your score will be.
That's awesome. That's great. So you touched on this a little bit, no late payments. What are some things is there something that people can do on a regular basis to keep their credit? Because I know your average person probably doesn't look at I know you get a free credit report, but people probably don't look at their credit scores. Are there things that they can do just habitually every month that might help them in the long run without trying?
I mean, having a credit monitoring service nowadays with as much identity theft that's going on and cybersecurity stuff that's going on is not a bad idea. especially if you're working on your credit, you've rebuilt it, you've got it to a point that you're proud. The last thing you want is some cybersecurity hack or somebody to run your credit. I had a business owner that I met, and I used to do networking groups with him, and every week, we'd send each other referrals. And he was a roofer. I remember he was asking me about his credit. I helped him improve a few things, just gave him some tips, never needed to remove anything. But having him understand the importance of credit monitoring saved him when his credit was ran within months of us having this conversation for a credit card at Victoria's Secret. And he was approved and charges were made to this account. And this gentleman's been on a roof, majority of his life. So I didn't see him doing that. He never acknowledged any knowledge of this. So, it was a way that we can keep track on it and know prior. There has been clients I've had conversations with where, and I would say 10 plus thousand lines of credit, $10,000 plus lines of credit have been taken out in their name without their knowledge. This is, I wish, more uncommon than it was, but it's not. And because of the way that we're connected nowadays, right? The way technology has give us this tool, right? This facility to do this stuff, people also find the ways to destroy it and use malice out of it, so we just have to protect ourselves. I find that that's the best way to stay on top. Like you said, every year you have by right the law to get a Fair Credit Reporting Act. It's backed by the Fair Credit Reporting Act to get a copy of your credit report once a year for free every year. Most clients have some kind of app. There's all types of different apps that you can use for free. Unfortunately, they're using your Vantage scoring method. They're not the most accurate thing to go off of, especially if you're trying to improve your credit. It's not going to be the same score that your lender and your mortgage officer, they're going to use. They're going to rely on your FICO. It's a different algorithm. It's just a different scoring method. It's not to say one is better than the other, but your FICO is a more true score. It's a more precise way that banks, and that's what they're going to use to determine your credit worthiness. So that's really what I would recommend, is just to be on top of that, especially if you've already improved your credit. You don't want to go backwards.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I forget the statistic off the top of my head, it's not if your identity is going to get stolen anymore, it's
Right.
when is it going to get stolen. So like you said, having the monitoring is a great thing to have for everyone.
Not to cut you off, but there's actually something interesting I was doing with my clients. If you go on Equifax breach, if you Google Equifax breach, the very first or second link, it'll actually allow you to put your last name and I think the last 6 digits of your social to see if you were one of those people that were hacked in the Equifax breach. And I would say 80% of the people that I speak with, yeah, they're on that list and they don't even know it.
Yeah. So
it's just a way to stay protected. Again, there's so much going on in our worlds. As far as protecting your payment history, there's nothing wrong with setting up auto pay. With as busy as we are, with the way the world is daily, sometimes we forget, we get overloaded. I tell my clients, hey, listen, as you're building your credit, put reminders, or better yet, set up auto pay.
Right.
Because worst case scenario, that minimum payment's only $15, $25. It's a lot better than paying that versus forgetting a missed payment. Because check this out, payment history, believe it or not, is the most important thing on your credit. So one late payment could literally take away 50 points from your credit score right off the top. I've seen it take up to 90 points, one late payment, believe it or not.
How long does that hit you? So say I'm busy today, I forget to make my payment, so it gets a ding on my credit. How long is that there for before it comes off?
7 years.
7 years. Wow, for 1 month.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
Your credit will bounce back. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like your credit's going to stay down 50, 90 points for 7 years. Your credit will bounce back the minute you start showing, again, consistent on-time payments. But you run the risk of losing out on better offers, on higher credit limits. You also have a tarnish. This is called a delinquency. Even though there's only one in the credit world, it's still a delinquency. And when you try to apply for lenders and loans and bigger items, that could deter either whether they give you, how much money you're requested, your interest rate. So it's best to just keep those things, if you can, 100% on time. If you have late payments, get with us. There's a way that we can challenge this. There's letters that we can write to the creditors, to the bureaus, And if they don't respond, believe it or not, if they don't respond in time within 30 days, if they can't validate or verify the information, with that alone, it could be removed and deleted in your favor.
So you mentioned Get With Us. What services does your company offer? How can they say I have a 400 score, Eric? What can you do for me?
The first thing I'm gonna do for you, George, I'm gonna say, let's have a free consultation. Let's have a chat just like this, whether it's over the phone, on Zoom, and let's understand what's going on with your credit. I can give you a free consultation. Typically that takes about 15, 20 minutes of my time over the phone because my clients are all over the country now. Since I'm located in Pennsylvania, they're all over the place. And what I wanna do with that 15, 20 minutes is understand what your goals are. I'm gonna find out what your time frame is. I'm going to find out also what you have open on your credit now, like what we're working with. And then we also need to find out what we're working against, right? Whether it's bankruptcy, repossession, multiple repossession, whatever the case may be. And then we're going to come up with a time frame. Okay, this should take us 90 days or less. This should take us 6 months or less. And based on the severity of what's going on or how many accounts we're working with, I'll give you that time frame. I start working on sending all the disputes with the creditors, with the bureaus. I take care of all of that for my client. They don't have to move a finger. They don't have to go to the post office. They don't have to send letters out. They don't have to type anything. I do that. Other than that, I put them on a program where they can start focusing on what is open and what trade lines need to be built. Because majority of the time, if you're in the 4, 5, or 6s, either something that you have open got tarnished or you don't have sufficient information open, in addition to maybe some negative stuff. So I really gear my clients on how they can boost their score up as high as possible and start improving it so that they can get $10,000, $20,000 lines of credit at the very least, pushing them over to the next threshold, over 700. And then from 700 to 800, it's a long ride because all you need is 7 to 10 years of payment history. That's where you're going to spend most of your time, believe it or not, is over the 700s, but right in that threshold between 7 and 8 until you get over the 10-year mark or have more than 10 accounts open. So one of those two, whichever comes first, is really going to help you shoot that number high up. So I put my clients on a program and we just get to work.
Awesome. That's great. If someone wants to reach out to you, how do they get a hold of you?
Very easy. You can reach out to me directly. I love putting my number out there. I love staying in the game. I stay hungry. I'm one of the owners, but I'm still in the trenches. I have 9 other associates, but I have every one of my clients reach out to me directly. That's the one huge thing about me versus not working with one of these big 1-800 companies, right? That you get a different person every time they pick up the phone. My number is 484-554-8157. And you can always schedule a free consultation right off of our website if you go on gkunitedllc.com.
Okay. I'll link all that in the comments below as well.
Awesome.
Another thing I noticed, we were talking earlier, you mentioned you authored a book.
Yes, I did.
How about you tell us about your book?
Yes, I did. And that was exciting because I've been a reader for quite some time and never thought I'd put my own energy behind becoming an author. But the book is called The Credit Files. I have it right here. And if you don't mind, I'd love to send you a few copies yourself, so you could have in your arsenal. I'm sure you read. The book is beautiful. As you can see there, it's got our dates, from when we all started, me and the 3 owners of the company. So George is my business partner on the back. And then we have Dylan Shively. He's located in San Antonio, Texas. The 3 of us met through another organization, believe it or not. We were all top income earners in that business, and we all had a passion, or somehow we were all connected to credit. Me being in the commercial space, Dylan being in the sales space, and George being in the real estate space. George, our other partner, has over 47 rentals with the credit, that we all own under GK United. So we've been blessed to not only be teachers, but students ourselves and use our own tactics and tricks to put in this book everything that we've learned on how to improve our credit. And like I mentioned, my fiance was my first guinea pig, and I remember when we cracked that first $20,000 credit card, it was huge. I remember it boosted her credit up. Her credit went in 1 month from 680 to 760. Oh, wow. And then she got approved for like a $20,000 line of credit. And then we moved into this new house and all these different things started happening. And we were just like, wow, imagine if our friends did this. Imagine if our that person that we all know that's just been dying to pull the trigger on that one goal, and maybe just a small bump of line of credit could help them, could give them just a little bit of that magic to get the ball rolling. So we put literally all of that into the credit files. It's on Amazon. The book is amazing. We've literally poured our heart and soul into this book. Anything that I could possibly teach on credit or think of on credit, I literally put in that book. So I'm very excited for it because I know it's going to help a lot of people change their lives. Anybody that reads through this is for sure going to have things that will blow their mind that they'll never understand unless they actually read this book.
That's awesome. I mean, I could feel your passion coming through the monitor. It's amazing. And if even a little bit of that passion is in that book, I can't wait to read it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely.
So is there anything we missed? Is there something, if you could tell somebody one thing they can do for their credit, one thing, if you can only do one thing, is there one tip or two?
One tip on your credit. Other than not paying bills late, I mean, that's the most important thing, is not to pay your bills late, and we really don't realize how important that is because, again, we're so focused on the negative stuff, right? The sore thumb really sticks out hard on this one. But payment history is truly one of the things. And I would say contributing, other than payment history, keep opening up accounts that help contribute to all three bureaus.
Okay.
All right, that's really important because sometimes I get a lot of questions. How come my Equifax is so much lower than Experian, and then it's nowhere near a TransUnion? I'm like, well, you only have one account reporting on TransUnion. You have 3 on Equifax, which is the higher score. That's why it's getting more robust and higher. So when I start explaining and peeling back the onion, people really understand this. So it's huge to keep at least 5 open accounts at all time, so that you can have and maintain the highest score possible, because you're going to still run your credit. You might get a collection here or there, but if you can keep those 5 open accounts, your credit won't take a dive. It'll maintain high from the payment history.
That's great. Well, listen, I appreciate your time. I mean, I learned some things that I didn't know, so that's great.
Awesome.
I hope people get something out of this video, and I'll link all your information below to include your book, your website, your phone number. And I look forward to talking
Thanks,
to you.
George. I appreciate it, George. Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on this interview. There's a lot of different things that I would love to keep talking about, but we don't have enough time. I'm sure anyone who has a question will definitely reach out. We do speak Spanish. I have associates in other states too that are bilingual or multi-language, and we're always growing too. If anyone's interested in learning the trade, we give a course. I've, in the last 6 months, I probably taught over 100 students all over the country now. And they come from different walks of life, realtors, lenders, accountants, financial advisors, people who are in the front lines of people with credit, or clients that maybe have credit needs. So if there's anyone who's interested in learning how to remove this stuff, maybe you have friends and family or clients that could take advantage of improving their credit, reach out to me too. And there's maybe something that I can do to help you improve their lives.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, I appreciate it. Happy 4th of July, everyone. We should have probably said that in the beginning. But enjoy your holiday. And again, I thank you for your time.
Thanks, George. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for your time, man.
Have a good one.